System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city love.
This is the Inner City Love broadcast. Today is Wednesday, December 3rd. I am Amin TMK alongside Amoja, Lil Tanky Sumler. Amoja, happy December. Happy Wednesday. How are you doing? What's the vibe in your area? Tell me what's going on.
Man, just always on edge, man. Living in the capital city and the most powerful empire the world has ever known, while important people that don't necessarily have any type of official government ties make secret deals in other countries. Leaves you on edge just a little bit.
Just a little bit. I thought it was peacetime, but it looks like things are ramping up. Let's discuss Venezuela, shall we? I think, this is something that obviously we could talk about this every day, and the updates are here. Let's play something, because I think we can react from there, and then once we do, I think we can get this conversation going. So here we go. CNN. I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure it'll be fantastic, and they'll ask a lot of great follow-up questions, but this is what we got.
I have to ask, he is clearly very concerned about Central and South American presidents allegedly trafficking drugs to the United States. So if that's the case, why is he planning to pardon the former Honduran president, who was convicted by an American jury of drug trafficking, who allegedly said, this is according to testimony from his trial, he would, quote, shove the drugs right up the noses of the gringos by flooding the United States with cocaine?
Well, the particular circumstances that I'm not quite aware of. However, I do know we're trying to build relationships with Honduras. We're trying to build relationships throughout South America and Central America, because China has greatly influenced those countries in a negative way. And it's not alleged that South and Central America and Mexico is flooding our streets with drugs. We know that's where they're coming from. And so I think by building new relationships, by allowing people to have a new beginning, he's showing good faith, saying, hey, we're going to work with you as long as you work with us.
All right. So that's that, right? Okay. Let's just put this up there too, because I want people to see this. Okay. This is from G Underground TV. All right. The U.S. hypocrisy knows no bounds. After announcing that he would be pardoning the narco dictator of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who conspired with the Sinaloa cartel leader and El Chapo to smuggle cocaine into the U.S., today announcing that Venezuela will have their airspace closed, signaling imminent military action, according to this tweet, against the so-called drug traffickers, a cover for pursuing regime change to overthrow Nicolas Maduro and stealing the largest oil reserves on Earth. The CNN clip obviously mentions something. This is just a follow-up. What are your thoughts on that, and what can you tell us about this particular situation and how it's happening?
I mean, it just goes to the hypocrisy, you know what I'm saying, of what we're talking about. That's the only word that comes into play. Everyone knows, right? Drugs are not coming out of Venezuela. They don't need that. They have natural resources like petroleum, like controlling 17% of the petroleum reserves that are left in the world. 17% are in Venezuela. We have people going on Fox News. We have people going on CNN saying outright that this will be a windfall for the American economy. You understand? Like, if a poor person goes into an Exxon and they drive off with $130 worth of gas, it's a crime. And you'll be pursued, maybe shot, maybe killed. But if the American government decides to go into Venezuela and steal $17 trillion worth of petroleum, it's just a cover story. And that's all it is. And drugs are the cover story for that. This is theft. Plain and simple. And the thing that you have to respect about Trump, if anything, is he said this outright, running for president. They had all that oil, and they were about to give it to us. And Biden let it slip away. And this is also another reason why I think John Bolton fell out with Donald Trump. John Bolton was assigned Venezuela. John Bolton gave the world one Guaido, who is a laughingstock to everyone. So he failed. And a fascist hates loss. They hate failure. They can't abide people that do not win. John Bolton lost, and that's why John Bolton is reviled, and this is the new go. John Bolton was the nice guy. We're just going to go in and do a little coup. The nice guy is gone, and now we're threatening imminent military force. And we can talk about the size of that force, because what you could do with that force, it varies, right? And that capacity allows you to do a great many things, but not everything. And so what is the real aim of that force? That's what's up for debate right now.
Yeah, I mean, great point. Today, there was a family in Colombia who filed a petition with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights alleging that Colombian citizen Alejandro Carranza Medina was illegally killed by a U.S. airstrike in September. And this is sort of what's happening. Again, what happened? Maybe you can help me because you're smart. You're a smart guy. He's a smart guy. What happens when you kill people that are not soldiers and are not combatants? What is that called?
According to Geneva, that's a war crime. And also, war has not been declared. And so to open fire without first trying to capture is a war crime. Firing on a vessel that's already been essentially it's a vessel that no longer is under its own power, right? Firing on such a vessel is a war crime, right? So you have levels on levels on levels upon infractions upon the way that war is supposed to be conducted. And again, this isn't like hippie, liberal, leftist ideas of like what war should look like. This is what the West and the rest of the world agreed on, everyone that signed on to the Geneva Conventions, right? Which the United States is a signatory. You know what I'm saying? So like there are rules about how you're supposed to be able to conduct a war. And there are rules for the ways that you have to restrain yourself. Like, for example, if someone was, say you were besieging a city, okay, and that those forces came running out at you with a white flag, right? It would be a war crime to open fire on them. Even if you thought maybe they had a weapon or something like that, the fact that they're in a surrender position, it makes that a crime. So like when you've already disabled a boat, right, in the middle of the ocean, right, it's a crime to then further fire on that boat. Your obligation is to capture the people that are still alive. And those people become prisoners of war, of which there is still a code of conduct for how those people need to be treated. And none of that is happening. And then you have videos of the Secretary of War saying things like, leave no survivors. I mean, that's like doom. You know what I'm saying? That's like Harkonnen shit. Kill them all, right? That's a shade of that.
Did you see the meme he posted? Like the children's book meme where they're in a helicopter? The Franklin meme. Franklin's a kid's show, and
they probably AI'd that image. You know what I'm saying? You probably just,
I think there's no question.
Style.
Hey, who did they hit up? They had to hit up a graphic designer. Like, okay, here's what I want. The Franklin cartoon with the little kids? I want him outside of a helicopter shooting fishermen on a boat. And this is what the Secretary of War, I know what they call it. Secretary of Defense it's Secretary of Defense for me.
Him.
Not so. I will. His mom named him Secretary of Defense. I'm gonna call him Secretary of Defense. But regardless, this is supposed to be the people that we're supposed to be looking towards as the leaders of a country and or at least the leaders of when it is right to engage in a country. I mean, we talk so much about the special military operation in Ukraine, and how long did that boil? I mean, how many when we first started this, maybe 2016, we were talking about Russia and Ukraine simply because we're like, hey, is anybody seeing this? And I think, again, the same thing happened, in the Holocaust in Gaza. It was like, hey, right before October 7th, still the international community is going, hey, everyone, we need to be solving this because something bad is really going to happen. And I feel like we're at that moment here in Venezuela. Again, I don't know. I'm just one person. We're just one news organization. But regardless, we have to push back against war in Venezuela as much as possible. And I think we just, as a society, really need to go back to being anti-war, which I do think we are. There was some reports saying from Ben Norton that 70% of Americans are against conflict within Venezuela, which makes me happy. That feels like a pretty good majority. But it does, again, I don't know that you were telling me a little bit earlier, maybe you can expand on that, sort of America being getting ready, the staging grounds, having these fleets in the Caribbean, the cost, like what does that look like, right? Like currently real time as we're moving, towards this conflict.
So one thing you spoke on was like that percentile, right? 70% of Americans relatively consider themselves against the war in Venezuela. I do want to talk about what that looks like, though, right? Because it's a different type of percentage. Even though that number is really high, what does that mean? What are the consequences? Are you willing to make that something whereas you will not vote for a politician that does not do everything, you know what I'm saying, in their power to stop this, right? It's just a general, I'd rather it not happen. And I think that's really kind of the skill that the Democrats have invoked since Obama. Obama, who was swept into power on a large anti-war sentiment, has nullified that and changed the face of progressivism to such the point whereas people are more wrapped into their own identity struggle, that the anti-war sentiment at large is largely deafened. You don't see anti-war politicians at all anymore. All of those guys have been voted out for any number of reasons. I think a lot of hedging is happening on a lot of different capacities. For example, the Democrats right now are hedging because they don't want the war to happen in the case that they're able to go into Venezuela and get a decapitation strike, you know what I'm saying? And then it's like, oh, look at what we did. They'll want to take the credit if Trump is successful. So they don't oppose too much, right? They don't give him explicit permission because what if it doesn't work, right? What if he goes in there and he takes his best shot and somehow or another, just like in the so-called 12-day war with Iran, right? All of the Ayatollah was able to survive, right? So then the Democrats are in a position, if Trump doesn't succeed, to put pressure on him, to use these comments that Pete Hegseth has said to maybe remove him, to threaten, an impeachment on that, to threaten to impeach Trump, right? But that's politics. That's not the same thing as being a principled anti-war politician, whether you're Democrat or Republican. And the irony is, right now, they've done such a good job that Democrats, by and large, and people that are progressive, still make arguments against, Maduro. Oh, Maduro's not a great guy. When we were out protesting against the Iraq war in the 2000s, no one was saying that Saddam is a good fucking dude. We were saying the United States doesn't have the right to invade this country, period. Point blank. Start with us, And now the Democrats and the people that vote Democrat, they're so distracted. They, is Maduro, that's irrelevant to the point whereas nowadays the best checks on this are coming from the right, and this used to be almost clearly a progressive issue. You have guys like Bryce Mitchell out there talking about, it don't make no sense go in there and take that oil from them Venezuelans, and the oil ain't gonna go, the price is still gonna go up, right? He's to the left of Mamdani. Mamdani's on the news saying, there's no question that there's a lot of repression that's happening, with no speaking on the pressure that the United States has put on that nation that causes the suffering, right? And so that 70% number, it means almost nothing. Because it won't be, the Democrats proved if genocide is not a deal breaker, nothing is, you know?
Yeah. And, I think that, again, the Democrats they only use the Trump stuff against him when it has to do with their leverage, So like you said, I mean, I think you made a great point. They just want to see, like, okay, if this works out, we can get them credit. If it doesn't work out, we can say we weren't a part of it, and either way, they can try to get some sort of political win with their base, which is irrelevant. This is why we keep telling you, maybe take a look at PSL. Maybe take a look at the Green Party. Maybe take a step away from the Democrats and Republicans, because I think, I don't know if, I'm sure you remember this.
And for the 3 right-wing people that watch us,
libertarian, go somewhere else, my
libertarian,
guy.
look something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever
Trump can't help
whatever
you,
brought you here, you have to understand the duopoly is not the answer. I'm not here to tell you what party it is, but I can certainly tell you what parties it ain't.
Yeah, and that's where I think we stand on the most, and that's the problem with Democrats. And again, I don't want to get too much into Mamdani. I don't want to bother ourselves with a Democrat in terms of will it be good or bad, because they're bad. Because they do this thing where they say these things. What are people into? What are the young people into? Let's push back on that, or let's accept what they're doing. Let's try to co-opt that. And, these are the times where we need to really be able to stand up and go, no, this is not what's going to happen, because, again, it's not easily massaged. This is real time. It's happening right now. This reminds me of the European countries when they all started recognizing Palestine over the last 2 months or so, because they know when this thing finally comes out and the full brunt, the full evidence of what happened and continuing to happen in Gaza and Palestine is going to be monstrous, and they want to distance themselves from that. And this is what we want from Democrat. Distance yourself, but right now, not in 3 weeks or 2 months
as opposed
or
to
6
just
months.
holding a sword of Damocles, a political sword of Damocles. It's like, if it works, we never really stood in your way. We've already established we don't like Maduro, even though I don't quite understand what the Democrats' argument would be against a brown leftist, should theoretically be at least, I don't know, ideologically sympathetic to some of this, especially people like Mamdani, but they're not. However, without giving that explicit consent, it's that sword of Damocles. If it goes wrong, we will punish you.
Yeah. And they don't stand on anything. And this is just the point. You have to stand on something. You can't be so malleable to the point where whatever general social issue crumb that you can get, because that's what the Democrats try to give you, crumbs. And usually it's not even that. It's not something substantial. It's just, hey, we have this, progressive idea. Or maybe people would tell us sometimes, oh, I voted for Obama because, I was thinking maybe we could have close ties with Iran, when we knew from the jump that the whole thing was a poison pill from the jump. There was never going to be a real movement to, keep Iran, nuclear in terms of power, but not.
And to this day,
nuclear.
they still blame the whole loss of the JCPOA on Trump, as if the Americans were following the rules of that treaty before then. And they weren't,
never
even under Obama.
Not once. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not once. It's like, what you call it? The movie Walk Hard, where he's like, and you didn't pay for drugs. Not once.
Right.
Not
Obama
once
gave the JCPOA lip service. Trump just tore it up.
Exactly. And that's sort of what the Democrats do. They just let things linger, until you sort of forget about it or you don't care about it. And again, this is going to, first of all, it's not just the Venezuelan people that are suffering, because they are. These are citizens of, northern Southern America. Sounds weird, but that region there with Colombia and Venezuela, and obviously the son of Southern Caribbean, which now the fishermen are just being shot for for fear tactics, intimidation. The United States is just merely trying to intimidate the Caribbean with military force. And if any other country was doing this, obviously everyone will be up in arms. But for us, it's like, just add one thing, just add one more thing to the menu of, Western destruction. Because we're not even talking about, Ukraine or Palestine right now, because obviously those are also very important. There's important stories everywhere. But the United States is going to go to war, and their casus belli is, well, there's some drugs there. Even though every single person who studies this, all the groups who study this, know Venezuela is not a big hub. And not only that, the rhetoric that they use, I know you've heard stuff like, oh, they're selling uranium to Hamas. Like keep it real. Y'all can't even keep it realistic. And I don't know who's buying into this propaganda, but it seems to be pretty absurd. They seem to be grasping at straws, and maybe that's why the 70% of people are lukewarm on it, or just a bit damp on it, But I'm hoping that, again, my goal, and I'll just leave it here. My goal, my desire, my hope is that we can become more of an anti-war left as well as an anti-war country, and continue to remind ourselves that wars mean no rules. And that means
you can't be a feminist and not be anti-war. Whatever your little identity is, whatever your ideology is for like anti-oppression methodology, it has to start with being anti-war, because all of the worst excesses of humanity happen during wars on an industrial scale.
Yeah, everything, all the bad stuff. And Venezuela is a beautiful and wonderful country with a wonderful electoral process. You can ask, or not ask, but you can, look up Jimmy Carter's opinion on it and hear for yourself. Also, lots of Venezuelans are being deported right now from the United States, and Venezuela has also been like, okay, cool, bring them on in, because I think that they also know, it's better for them to have their citizens there. And I think even people who have fled Venezuela for the reasons of the sanctions and things that cripple that country, which is an act of war already. I mean, it is so funny. Like, again, I know that our listeners understand the complexities of this. And I also want to acknowledge that even though we don't have troops on the ground there in Venezuela, we have been at war with Venezuela for quite some time, if we believe that sanctions are an act of war, which I think me and you do believe. So, again, it just goes to the point of, why are we trying to destabilize countries? Why are we trying to, a person who's been elected? I mean, he was elected. There's irregularities. I mean, for God's sakes, guys, Donald Trump lost the election. He was talking about irregularities here, and you didn't believe him then. So why would you believe him now?
And there it is. And, the Supreme Court of Venezuela ruled on this. Right, not just the voters, the Supreme Court of Venezuela.
They were satisfied.
Said Maduro is the duly elected president of Venezuela.
If people want to revolt in their own countries and they want to rebel in their own countries, well, that is for them. But the United States and their Luffy flags and their Gen Z protests and their Nobel
you don't
Peace
see none
Prize,
of them in Venezuela, right?
Well, exactly. But they did get a Nobel Peace Prize for their literal opposition.
Right.
Another one, the woman who got a Peace Prize is literally saying the same thing. Like, the Venezuelans are supporting Hamas, and these just. I mean, there's such wild claims, you just can't really even address them. And this is what it is. The entire world, in terms of the Western world, at least, whether it's media, whether it's TV, whether it's news, whether it's the politicians, they're also sort of geared up to, do whatever the deep state wants, which, they want that oil. And Iran was not as easy for them as they thought it was going to be. And I don't know why they did think that, but we'll see what happens. Let's just give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts. Hit up Apple Podcasts. Leave us a little review. I'm trying to get our artwork changed on Apple Podcasts. If you follow us there, Anyway, I won't even get involved in that. Spotify, you can rate us and leave comments now. YouTube, like, subscribe. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. Be a part of it. We got perks, fables, foibles, other American sins available in the description. We just dropped a song today, Dangerfield. Search it on the platform you use. Search Amin TMK or Lil Tanky. That's what I got for you today, my friend. What did I miss? What's your final thoughts, your final statements?
Yeah, when we're talking about, we joked about at the beginning of the broadcast, secret decisions are being made in Moscow. there is by people that are not elected by the government. You know, we have Steve Witkoff, who has no official capacity with the United States government, and Jared Kushner, who is Donald Trump's son-in-law, right? Deciding the fate of many countries, not just one country, many countries, because they had a 5-hour conversation with the Russian equivalents, except these are official Russian people, you know, that serve for the government. 5 hours, you know, and the rumor is Wang Yi was also in Moscow. Wang Yi is essentially the director of state. He would be the equivalent of a Marco Rubio for China. Okay.
Except actually doing what Marco Rubio would be doing if he was
Marco
a
Rubio
real
should be the one
Secretary of
doing
State.
this here. Exactly. Right. Instead, it's Trump's fixer and his son-in-law cutting backroom deals. And it makes you wonder what those deals are, you know, because it could quite easily be the Russians are like, look, we won't get involved in Venezuela so long as you don't get yourself in this Ukraine deal anymore. You know what I'm saying? Passing that information on to China. Look, we won't get involved with this Taiwan thing if you don't get involved with Venezuela. Like, at this point, it's all conjecture. No one knows because no one
And
even
that's
gave
not how
readouts.
negotiations should be. You know, should be public. But again, these backroom deals, we had a conversation here or there. That's not what the government's supposed to do.
The most pressing issue has to be anti-war, guys. Like, more than any other personal issue, nothing affects humanity more than war. That is more important than any singular struggle that we're going through. And that's where, like, if you're an activist out there putting your voice on anything, your voice need to be out there loudly talking about what the consequences will be, at least as far as electoral consequences for politicians that don't listen to your will, you know?
Well said. Yeah. For Amoja Little Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast, and I say this with a full heart. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.